So today I want to go through the process of modeling a character and doing some sculpting as well. We might actually get into rigging it at the end. The character I want to make is, I don't want to reveal it just yet, but it'll be a kind of creepy horror kind of cartoon creature in order to avoid the notion that I'm making this for kids. So first I want to start with this cube. I'm going to go ahead and just take that. You can start with anything. You can start with a sphere if you want. There's a couple of ways of thinking about how to model this. You could model a basic character and then do proper, let's like go into edit mode, so we could insert a center line. This is the x-axis right here. Let me go ahead and turn on my screen keys, just to cast keys just in case. Let's see if that holds up. So you could model, you know, a character with a center line and get the topology right. Let's go ahead and delete this and do it across. We'll do a mirror. And I've done previous videos that show this process. And then you could take the problem with doing this mirror and then modeling across before you get the actual center line is that if we want to go and put a neck on this, it kind of limits our ability to do so easily using the tools that we have at hand. So like I've created this inset, but it's insetting across the center line seam. It doesn't really give me a good topology for a neck. So what I'm going to show you instead is a different way of going about creating a character. It's a little bit more work, but you have a lot more control over the topology and you have a lot more freedom in how you sculpt the character. So let's go back. I'm going to delete this cube. There's other videos that I've made that show how to model across symmetry using topology as you go and piece by piece, kind of piecing the thing together in a low poly way. Today I'm just going to do it sort of the Zbrush mode where we can add, in this case we'll just add, we can add a UV sphere. Go to, and you know, the thing you need to understand if you're not familiar with these UV spheres is they pinch at the top, where there's this sort of like pole that comes to a bunch of triangles at the north and south pole. Everything else is quads. This is problematic from the point of view of UV unwrapping and creating a character for sculpting. So like in other words, if I go in and I sculpt this, you can see where it just wants to do this kind of point on the head, just sculpting as it is. However, just undid that. Let's go back out and into sculpting mode. There's this remesh, and there's also den topo. So if I do remesh, we can crank this down to something like 0.01 or 0.09 and remesh. Doesn't look like much changed, but if you look at topology now, we've got tons of polygonal geometry to work with. And we can smooth this out, these quads. It was because I'd already had kind of that low poly shape. And to be honest, the topology doesn't really matter. This hard edge, we can still smoothly sculpt across it. We're going to do a lot of smoothing. What I'm doing is using the standard draw brush, and if you hold down shift, let me see if I can turn on my screen keys, if it even works in sculpt mode. This is one of the things I noticed. Yeah, so there's my left mouse. So you can see I'm left mouse. Now I'm holding down shift, smoothing across the mesh. Okay. Let me undo. So there's our sphere as a starting point. I've kind of started really high in this case. So You can see I'm also mirroring across the x-axis. So this is the x-axis. You don't actually see it. I guess you can turn on grid. Nope. Oh, that just switches from perspective to orthogonal. So for the purposes of modeling a character, you can sculpt just this way and get like a really rough, quick shape. Don't even worry about all of this square topology, because it's all going to get smoothed out by the time you're done sculpting anyway. And it gives you a kind of freedom to explore the shape of the character, assuming you know some topology and things like that. And you can use all of these brushes. One of the other brushes I like a lot is this elastic deform, because you can kind of push and pull, change the radius a little bit, push and pull the shape to get a really rough starting object shape for what you want. So maybe this nose pokes out more. The head might taper a little bit in the back. Pull the neck down. You can smooth all that out. Just holding down Shift. Do a jaw. And the other cool thing is, like, once you've got, once you've done some deformation and gotten a certain shape, smoothed it out, whatever, as a starting point for the head that you're trying to make. It's kind of like Spider-Man. That's not what I'm going for, but you can see how it's like pushing clay or Play-Doh. Pull out some ears. We could also do sort of Boolean modeling to add ears if we wanted. And all I'm doing is just like getting enough. This is just me sort of playing to come up with a shape that I like, using smooth to kind of correct or get rid of any don't even know if I want ears yet. I could pull some. You can start to see with the character I'm going for here with these ears. So as we're doing this modeling, getting just this rough shape, you can don't have to really worry about the topology at this point, because to be honest, when I'm distorting all this stuff across the shape of the surface, you can see like there's no flow, like the ears that will make no sense. You can't even really see the edges because they're so dense. But the point is that we can always come back and do another remesh and recorrect. So it's not really that important to get the topology right now as you're going. It's more about just getting the general shape. And then we'll come back and we'll actually retopologize the entire thing using correct topological flow and see, like, the thing I like about working this way is like you can get a really good idea of the rough shape without having to have a lot of detail, because I'm wanting this guy to look a little sinister and angry, and you can, a lot of that happens in the brow, the shape of the nose, the angularity of the cheeks in terms of pulling them out. And we could come back in and add eyes and sculpt everything once we've got the rough outline and the shape pretty easily. And that initial remesh that I did goes a long way towards getting pretty good topology. Kind of want him to have like an overbite and a weak jaw. Something like that. Give him some kind of rat teeth. I also want him to be older, so he's going to have kind of a some eyes that maybe look a little sad. It's a pretty good starting point for the mesh. Yeah, let's go with that for now. So one of the things I want to do once I get this roughly right, or just the general shape for the head, let me zoom back out a little bit and get this. This is all going to change, so I don't need to be too perfect with it, but I do want him to have a kind of skinny neck. And then you can also just pull out the neck and start even working on the body, because I've still got plenty of topology. You'll see when it starts to get thinned out, just based on the way the squares will look. You'll see some edges to the shape. So you can totally model a whole body this way. Takes a little pushing and pulling. Another tool you can use is this retopo. We'll get into that in a minute, but that'll add topology as you go, and kind of correct it too, as with the flow. But I do like to use this general just elastic deform to create, to kind of drag and sort of Play-Doh shape the thing as a starting model, if that makes sense. For some reason it's not distorting across that surface. So, doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to go ahead and do a remesh. And you'll see maybe some of the topology changes as it's recalculating. But it's, you know, I'm back to where something I can work with and smooth out, and it kind of keeps the general shape, gives me some more polygons to work with in that general area. And then there's more here now. I can pull out some arms, or at least start to pull out some arms. You have to basically play around with the radius. You don't want it to be too small, because then the edits are too small, and right now we're just making a general body shape. And again, you want to leave sort of something to work with. The fine detail, you're going to end up doing a ton of editing anyway, so I do want them to be sort of skinny. We'll fix his back there in a minute. Then we can pull out. I'm running a little low. You can start, when you start to see these edges, you can tell topologically you're pretty low in density, and if you keep pushing it, it's gonna get super low. Although I'm probably fine up here in the arms. And that's again, doesn't have to be like anatomically correct just yet, because I can come back and work on it more later. I'm just getting a general body proportion. I'm going to make his hips really wide, change the radius, start to try to pull out some legs. see I'm really starting to stretch the topology down here at the bottom because I'm running low. It's looking pretty good. We'll go ahead and do another remesh so it fixes all this. And then you can smooth and keep pulling out the feet. Trying to figure out how long I want his legs to be. He's not going to be like anatomically correct in terms of proportion because I'm making him more cartoony. That'll help. I've done this. I've sort of played around with the idea for this model a little bit already, and if you go too realistic, it gets pretty creepy, and it's also not really getting the idea of the character that I'm going for across. So you can tell like I've really gone low on the stretching the topology out for the feet. But again, you can like fix that pretty easily. Ooh, that's getting rough. Let's see. I'm going to stretch the legs out later, and I can always do that. I'll do one more remesh. And then we can start working on some detail. And we may want to get the fingers pulled out too and finish the feet. Let's see what this density looks like. Yeah, I may have enough to... Let's try it. Just even pulling out like the nub of a finger is a good start. His hands will end up being a little bit bigger. And you do want to get kind of the general shape of the hand right when you're starting to make these finger nubs coming out, so that the topology flows a little bit better. Let's figure. And by that I'm just mean I'm making kind of like the where your palm is a little bit thicker right before it gets to the fingers right here. And the same with the thumb. It's easier sometimes to sculpt this low poly geometry like this, where it looks kind of rough, but it's easier to pull because there's just less polys to push. And then I can come back and smooth it. So that'll be the nub for the thumb. That'll be the index finger, middle finger, ring finger. Make sure you give it enough roundness. And then pinky. Getting a little bit thick here on this side. Alright, let's do a remesh. I may have to go lower on the poly count. Yeah, probably. Still pretty low out here in the edges because I've got more topology to cover with the shape of the body, and it kind of evenly distributes it across the entire character. So let's see. Probably have some to work with in the feet. Or shoes. can zoom way out and grab these and pull them down longer. And then just move up and pull that back to give them some longer legs. Seems a real messy way, but I like this because it's a lot more sketch-like. And yeah, the topology is sort of like super messy all over the place right now. But it's a great way if you don't really know what you want to model, or even if you have some sketches to work from as like references in the background, or if you want to set up like some references on an axis, you can pretty easily set that up and then sculpt against that for this. So I'm going thinner on the neck. Maybe go a little Adam's apple. Put some shoulders in there. Just smoothing now. I think I should probably try to pull these fingers. So in order to do that, another way I could do these fingers is I could add them as like cylinders on the ends, and that may be a way of ballooning the whole thing to get it to work. It's gonna have big hands. Let's see if I can add. We'll see how this works. Oh, I know a way. I can turn on Topo. So let's turn that on. It's gonna complain and say if you haven't done this remesh already, it'll complain and say, oh, you're gonna lose UVs or whatever. In this case, we don't really have UVs, so it doesn't matter. And like I said, we're going to retopologize from this final shape anyway. But what Topo does is basically allows me to sculpt out and generate topology on the fly. So for fingers and things like that, it's perfect because you can generate them as you go and get them to extend out and just keep modeling from that. So like we may want to change the detail, make it smaller, not too small. There, that's pretty good. So by making it smaller, I'm basically creating, let me show you this in wireframe. It's hard to see. Let me turn on wireframe on top. So in the view, not there. Let's go back to, if you go and you turn over here in your object attributes, go to the object properties, and then viewport display, you can turn wireframe on top, and basically you can see what Topo's doing there. And the thing you need to understand is that it's based on the size of the brush and the distance to the model. So when I zoom in, I get more detail. When I zoom out, I get less. So just be aware. In the case of the fingers, I want a little more detail. And also, too, this will be based on how kind of powerful your machine is. So I'm just adding some detail on the fingers so I can sculpt them in the hands in general. And then I can go and use the elastic brush to pull them into shape where I want it. So another cool tool for this is the snake hook tool. I'll show it to you in a second. I just want to get something that I can actually snake hook with. And then this will be the pinky. I guess I could have done 3 fingers, but all right, let's finish. I'm just smoothing everything out so it gets a little thinner here. Zoom out and do less. All right, so this is the snake hook tool, this little twirly snake hook says it. You can basically grab that, and then if you go big enough, you can pull, and notice that it'll generate this long stream. And it also, because I have retopo turned on, it generates the topology as I go. And really all I care about here is just getting, it's a little bit too big. I'm going to undo, be a little careful. There's some weird looking fingers. You can then do inflate, or inflate, and that'll get it to thicken up. And because again we have retopo turned on, it's going to generate the topology as we inflate it, so it thickens them up. You can tell I'm getting into some heavier poly counts because it's starting to slow down a little bit, and also because I'm recording. But I just want to get these sort of fat at the fingertips, and fat enough to work with sculpting wise. We can pull them and adjust them shape wise later. That pinky's really messed up. Pull this over. We can turn off, one thing to understand, retopo won't work with the elastic deform, so you might as well turn it off. And then you can pull, it'll behave a little bit better. It won't try to add that topology while you're doing the elastic deform. So now we can pull things around, make his wrist thinner. We'll turn off wireframe because it's a little hard to see. And this still needs a lot of work, but I'm going to turn retopo back on and fix the thumb. With the, not blob, but inflate. Turn the wireframe back on so I can see the resolution I'm working at. Okay. From that then, since it's getting a little heavy on the topology, because of this, I'm going to go turn off retopo and then run a remesh real quick. Let me turn off the wireframe. And you should see it'll redistribute in an even fashion across all the fingers. So it's thinking about it. Now it's running it, and you can see that the poly count on these fingers went low, but that's more than enough for me to sculpt with at this point. And it kind of helps to keep the thing responsive and speedy. Alright, good enough. I'll fix the hands later. I just needed that detail. He's going to have shoes on, so that's good. Alright, so this will be my low poly mesh, or lowish poly. It's not low because the remesh is set to pretty high, but it gives me enough to work with. Now, what I want to do is go to modeling, and you can see how dense this mesh is. It's not unreasonable for, in this case, it's 580,000 faces. I've worked with millions. By the time we're done, it may end up being close to that, although this is plenty of detail to work with to get the general shape that I need. I'll show you better ways to get that detail back once we've done a retopologize on it, and then we can up-res that and use some modifiers to get fine surface detail like skin tone and stuff out of it. All right, so first thing I want to do in this mode, go back out to object mode. I want to add a sphere for his eyes, UV sphere, and hit W, pull it up. And notice that I'm not getting my screen keys, so let me turn those back on and off. For some reason it starts and stops. All right, and then rotate. And the reason I rotate is I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to get 90-degree rotated. The reason that I rotate is because I like to have the pole for the eyes. It makes it easier if I wanted to use these eyes for actual modeling to position, use this as sort of an iris or an opening. And then I'm going to scale. And I need to get the eye sort of in the socket. It's not going to look right just yet, but it gives me something to model around. So, and then how big the eyes are and where they actually sit, we can reposition them later, but where they actually sit is up to you. In this case, I kind of want to bring them down a little bit like that. And yeah, I'll leave them that size. Looking at it from the side, I just want to make sure maybe his eyes are a little more sunk in. Yeah, like that. That looks good. And like I said, we can position this later. I'm going to leave this. I could right mouse click and say shade smooth, but I want to leave the poly count so I can use these edges as sort of an idea of where the iris will sit. Now I want to add a modifier, mirror, and I want to mirror across my character. So I'm going to select the mirror object, and that'll give me the other eye in the other socket. Okay. And then from there I can go back and start sculpting the face, fixing the eyelids and stuff around this eye so that I get it correct position wise. I think it's probably enough to work against right now. So let me go back, select, make sure you select the character model. Let's go ahead and save at this point. You don't want to lose this work up to now. Call this Old Man Rat. Save as. Alright, now if we go into sculpting, now I have a lot more to work with. I can pull my eyes out, the eye socket. I can start to sculpt eyelids around his eyes. In this case, I want to drop the cheeks down, and I will sculpt some eyes, some eyelids up. I'm also probably going to pull this in and down, give him some sunken inner eye. Pull this back and down. Cheeks. Notice I'm using this elastic deform tool. Pull his eyebrows out a lot more. And what I want to do, let me go back out. I want to make these eyes semi-transparent so I can see through them and sculpt the eyelids out into it. So let's go back out to modeling mode. It's going to bring me into edit mode. Go back out to object. All right, so I want to select the eye. Just one's fine. Go to the material. Let's add a new one. Call it transparent eye. And all I really care about here in terms of the transparency is just down here on the alpha. I want to take that down. Nothing happens. But if I go down to blend mode, right now it's set to opaque. If I set that to alpha blend, Oh, I'm not in shaded mode. Right now, I am in shaded mode. I'm not in viewport shading using the actual material. So now you can see it's transparent. So in that case, it's too transparent. I kind of want to crank it up, and I'll make it a different color just to help too. So let's make it kind of bluish. I think it's applied to it. Is it not? Yeah, it's on the sphere. For some reason, it's not showing up blue. It might be. I'm in shaded mode. Let's see if this helps. Nope. That'll change the shading to blue in the non-rendered mode. So there's blue there. There's, the transparency. That's the thing. Right now the alpha set, and I've got this alpha blend set here. Transmission, the transmission, it has to do with actual rendering and shading. So you'll notice if I crank that transmission up, that'll also affect the transparency, but it has more to do with this screen space refraction and like distorting things in that. If I turn that on, I cover that in another video in terms of showing the transparency, but you can see how there's a sort of refraction going on as I move this thing around. It looks like kind of a marbly glass. So yeah, you don't want that transmission to be on because it's just gonna distort and change what you see through. And in this case, I need to be able to work on the inner eyelids as they sit through the eye. So I'm just trying to figure out how to turn this eye color blue. Let's see if I take the alpha back up to 0. Alpha's there. Oh, my base color hadn't changed. I thought I changed the subsurface color. I apologize. This has to do with like color of skin and stuff. This is what I want to change. There's my blue. Take the alpha down. It still looks blue, so I can sculpt against it. Yeah, that looks good. I'm going to leave the back face on. If I do turn this off, watch what happens over here in this side. It turns that off. Actually, yeah, that may be better too. I'm going to turn back face culling. It just turns it off, or turns the back faces off so you don't see through. You'll just see the forward facing objects, and that'll work better. I think, let me see, what's a good transparency to work with? Probably something like 60.6. All right, now we select his head or the body. Let's go ahead and save. Select the body, go to sculpting. Notice in sculpting, I'm in shaded mode, so I don't see the transparency. I have to be in viewport shading in order to see the transparency. And this is something to know, like you can work in this mode. You can also turn on scene lights so that you can sculpt and see sort of the scene detail. You could also turn on the scene world, and then you're going to be sculpting where you actually have kind of a lit surface. You can check against that. Obviously it makes it hard to see depending on the position of the light, so I just usually sculpt with those turned off. Alright, so let's pull his eyes. Again, I'm using this elastic deform. I'm just pulling everything forward because I want him to be kind of squinting. In fact, let's pull the whole eye forward. And we can use then the Sculpt tool, running it across here to kind of create an eyelid. Smooth it out. Run this here. generate kind of the outer, it's like an epicanthic fold almost on the outer eyelid here, and we can crease that later too. And then I want to do the same right here across the bottom eye. Notice I'm not working with a whole lot of detail, so it's a little hard to get things positioned or aligned. I can just pull them into place. Kind of want this eye to come up a little bit more. Let's see. Trying to make him squint. Also too, there's like a pocket where the eye sort of folds up here, and that'll work for that. I'm just pulling the eyelids out more to make him squint more. Now I'm kind of creating that epicanthic or eye wrinkle here. Epicanthic fold is an extra fold in Asians that will make the eye look a little bit thinner. So this isn't really kind of an epicanthic fold. It's more of a smile line, if you want to call it that. Yeah, it's already looking a little bit better. So you can zoom out. Notice that his eyes are kind of turned down. I sort of dig that. You can grab, if you zoom out and this brush gets bigger, you can play around with how that looks. So you can run it up, you can run it down more to make it look a little bit sadder. Maybe even pull that up. Close his eyes a little bit more. Cheekbones I do want to kind of drag, so I kind of have to just pull the eyelid up. Looks good. Looks good from the side. May want to pull this back a little. Smooth, especially right here. Okay, so now let's work on the mouth a little bit and the nose. For the mouth, I can change the radius a little bit. Still want to work fairly big. I'm just making like some lips. I want to make there's a little bit of a muscle that comes along from the nose down around the lips. I'm going to do a bottom lip right here. Okay. I can push, if I hold down Control, I can do the opposite, sculpt up into his nostrils. Topo's turned off. I just was wondering why it was running a little bit slow. We'll fix that. Smooth. I could use pull to pull the nostril back and up a little bit, and then pull this part down. So you can see I really like this deform tool, last deform tool. There's another deform that's a grab that's a little bit kind of smaller and more precise. So if you grab that, you can pull out even smaller area. It's just basically in the fall off on the brush. And a way to see that is if you select any of these brushes, look at the tool, you get all of the different things you can do with the brush here. And this fall off, notice that they have some different, each one of these has a different kind of setup for the brush. But that's how the brushes vary and why they do different things. So this one I like because it's just a little bit less destructive, I guess is a good way to put it. Not that they're not all, I mean, you're basically doing destructive modeling here, or sculpting, but excuse me, it's spread out over a wider surface, I guess is a good way to put it. So far I'm digging. Let's see if I can fix these ears. So this is the tricky part where the back of the head and where the ears meet. I kind of want to sculpt that actually. Let's do another brush. I'll try the draw first and just hold down Control and run it across to sort of pinch here. It's hard to see what I just did, but I can smooth it. It's being in shaded mode, so in this case, it's sometimes easier to sculpt in this viewport shading. I call this render shaded mode, and then this will just be shaded mode because it's just showing like a default standard shader. But it's a little easier to see what you're sculpting, and it'll also sculpt a little bit faster. So you can see I'm trying to pinch these ears so they look like they're sort of sewn on here, and give it a seam. Plus, if you looked at it from behind, they were a little sorry, they were kind of thick right here. You can see what I'm talking about right there. So I'll just brush across that. I want them to just sort of be barely attached. Smooth that. Sometimes you'll do this and it'll feel like you're doing like claymation kind of sculpting, and it gets really rough looking, and that's okay. Sometimes you'll want that effect. If you don't want that effect, don't worry, you can always just hold down Shift and run the brush across, or the smooth brush is scrape, fill, flatten, where's smooth? One of these is the smooth brush. There, smooth, that one. You can just swap over to that if you don't remember the hold down Shift. All of the shift in any brush will basically open up smooth. And the further out you are, the bigger the smooth, or the wider the effect of it. Okay. It's looking okay. Kind of want to pinch or round out the bottom here so that these ears don't run in. I'm still not sure if I want these ears to be covered like by this mask he's going to be wearing, or this ear mask, head gear thing. But I'll figure it out. Alright, so now the question is, do we want, if this character is going to have teeth and an inner mouth and tongue, do we want to go ahead and model that now? We could always come back and model it when we go to do the retopology. So modeling it now may be effort that we don't really need, because basically when we come back and do retopology, we're going to create eyeline or edge loops around the eyes and the mouth that we just don't have in the topology now. So really, again, this is more about just getting a general shape with all of the different guides, and then being able to work with that to go back and retopologize. Okay, so I'm going to say, yeah, we're not going to, that's too much. We're not going to sculpt the inside of the mouth right now. Let's go to the sharpen brush and just run trying to figure out where his mouth and his frown line go. Something like that. He's got a big mouth, kind of cartoony. Go back and see what I had before. I think I like a little bit less like that. That's probably good, which means I need to bring this down closer and add some extra jowls here. Like that. Once I get the general idea of the shape, I don't have to go into too much detail because I can always come back, because when I do it, it's just something I'm going to have to retopologize over anyway. I'm just trying to figure out when I want to go and start the retopology here. So let's keep working on this. Round the nose, the nostril out, maybe give it a flip up there. And smooth it here. Could probably do like this hard edge brush, which is clay strips. Flatten might work. I'm trying to sculpt that shape, that kind of bow of the top lip, using the flatten brush to create the lips. Then do, oops, actually I wanted to push. I did the opposite of what I wanted. I wanted to put this in and then pull these out. That. I'll fix this in a while. Smooth that. Let's work on, again, I don't know if I want the ears to be covered like it's in a hood. I think I kind of do. I might make them poke out a little bit here, and I might make this hang. I'm still deciding. That's all stuff we can do in the retopology. And to be honest, I think we could probably do just about everything in the retopology, although I may want to thin these arms out. I kind of want to get the general shape a little bit more. And you can see if I go to the F3 on the top, the hands are not the right size just yet. One way I can easily fix that is to because when I do the retopology, I'm not going to do it across the whole lot, but I'm going to mirror across, so I really only need to get one of these right. Let's go back to modeling. And we're in edit mode. And I'm just going to select, I need to be in X-ray, select all of these faces for the hand to scale it to get it to the right size, because I want to make it bigger. Let's do this much. Trying to figure out where I want the glove line to be. It's going to have a glove on. There we go. We'll go to F1, so we're looking at it. I'm looking at it from behind. I must have modeled him backwards. We can flip him. So I'm going to scale, hit R, just grab this and scale it up. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Hit F2 to look at it from, or F3 to look at it from the top. Pull it out, because I kind of scaled it back on itself. Also, trying to figure out if the length of the arm is right. Neck's kind of long, but I can fix that with the shoulders. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I think F2 or F1 straight on to drop the hand a little bit. That'll work. Go back to object mode. I want to show you a cool, we'll see if it works. If you go back into sculpting, there is a tool down here at the bottom, which is this mesh filter. If you click on that, it'll open this up. Well, the filter type depends on what it is. So it's inflate, smooth, scale, inflate, sphere, and then there's this, right now it's like doing on a deform axis, it's doing across everything. So if I click this and then drag on the character, you see the effect of the filter. So I'm doing an inflate across the whole thing, or pulling it in, kind of looks a little, but it's pretty cool. Like, so you can do some interesting kind of like really bizarre effects. I'm gonna undo that. The one, let's see. Scale will just scale the whole thing up. Smooth will smooth everything across the entire mesh, softening it up a lot. So you can see the difference here. If I do and just drag smooth, that it starts to smooth the whole mesh entirely. I'm going to leave it the way it was. Sphere will kind of turn the whole thing into a sphere, or spherize it, or despherize it. And random, let's see what happens, sort of takes the whole thing with a noise filter and pushes and pulls the polygons kind of like fur. The reason I wanted to show that is I thought that it would actually flip across the symmetry so I could just apply this hand, but again, it doesn't really matter if I don't. I could use the mask and do the same thing. I'm just going to leave it as it is. What I do want to do though is, whoops, I want to clean up this edge for the glove. So scroll back to the top. I'm going to go back to my standard brush, hold down Shift, and just kind of brush around to redistribute. so it looks like a glove again. And then I can run the draw sharp around to create that kind of rolled glove back. Or I could look at his hand. Let's go to F3. Looking down from the top sometimes is easier. I'm going to use this elastic deform and kind of reshape everything to get it in the right position and get the hand shape looking right. Number one thing that's wrong is that pinky's too long. And then the ring finger is longer. I can pull to fix all of that. Let's go Control F3 and look at it from the bottom. Just like I said, retopology, we're going to get all this just right. So it doesn't matter if it's not perfect. All right, might want to work on the butt cheeks a little bit. And also create some shorts for him. Maybe the tail too. Although I may do the tail like it's pinned onto him. I think I might do that. So you can see that this hand's roughly the right idea. This hand is not, but that's okay, because like I said, I'm going to only retopologize one side, and I'm going to be working on the right anyway. Do I want a shirt? I don't know yet, but I can always, like I said, I can add that in topology too. Okay, so let's go back to modeling. I'm in edit mode, go back to object mode, file, save as, or save. We can save. Okay, so to do the retopology on this guy, Blender's got a nice, in 2.81, it's got some nice features for doing this type of retopology. First, I want to turn off, not that, let's call him Mickey, or Ricky Rat, or Old Man. Turn off the eyes so I can just work on retopologizing this part. And all I want to do is add, in object mode, I want to add a mesh plane. I'm going to give it a new material so I can see what I'm working against. We'll call this retopo matte. I don't care about, well, let's go ahead and make it blue in the base color. And we'll make it blue on the viewport display. Probably going to do this in viewport display there. Turn off that. Push the plane, pull the plane out to here. And what we're going to do is apply, actually, let's get it over here. Pull it off to the right so it's on one side of the y-axis, and go ahead and apply a mirror modifier to it. So then set that mirror modifier to mirror across the object. So now we're going to have two planes. We're only going to be working on this one. If we go into edit mode, and you can see we've only got access to this one. We're going to turn on snapping. And we're going to make it snap to face. And we'll crank up over here in the modifier, we'll crank up the merge limit to something like 3 or 4. And then we can go to point pushing, or point selection here. I'm just going to hit W so I can shift these points around. And I'm going to move them so that they'll snap to the surface of this model, like that. Zoom in, and I just want to start around the eyes and get them to come together, and that's the reason I cranked up this merge limit. On top of that, I want them to always be visible on top of this topology that I'm working against. So if I go to with this selected, if I go into the object properties right here, this orange square within a target, go to viewport display, just make it so that they're always in front by clicking this checkbox. So now you can see them in front of the model that I'm snapping to. Okay, so what's this for? Basically, I'm using this, I'm going to go ahead and just start retopologizing. I'm going to add like poly by poly so I can create the lines the way I want them based on this mesh that I've sculpted out, freeform, okay? And then I'll use this model for all of my UV mapping and everything else, and it'll be low poly and have the right topology. So how do I do that? I've got these starters. I'm only going to model on 1/2 of it. So I can use this tool, the poly build tool. And notice when you run around that, you're going to see like a selection on the edges. And if I hold down, I can also see, select the verts, depending on how closely zoomed in I am. But what I want to do is I want to pull this edge. I'm just going to pull that out. And we'll try to work low poly as possible while we're figuring out the topo. So I'm just going to shift position. And you can see it's sort of following the surface of the model, at least the nose. And I'm just using, maybe I have this snapping set too high for this merge limit. I'm going to crank it down a little bit, something like 2. That way I have to get the points a little bit closer. So if I go and grab the points, hit W, move them a little bit up, then they'll snap closer. Sometimes when you're doing the snapping, you're going to want to move these points after you've drug out some sort of selection or something, so that they will automatically kind of like find the surface and snap to the face, depending on how the model's behaving. Excuse me. You can see there's a kind of crook in the nose here. I want to capture that, so I'm going to move this point down where that is, and I'll just go ahead and insert an edge loop right there. And that's one of those points where you're going to want to, after you've inserted that, make sure that it's actually snapping to the surface of the model. Okay, let's leave that for now. We'll go ahead and run this further down. You can see the issue with doing the in front is that when I'm behind, I can actually see this in front, so sometimes it can get a little difficult to edit. It just takes a little getting used to. Go back to your poly build, pull down. You can, while in poly build, you can still grab all these points and drag them around. And then from that, you can pull out one like this way. And then from there, depending on how you want to do it, if you want to just start sewing these together, the trick is to go and select this point, hold down Control, and then that'll drag out like this position, the opposite side. Okay, Control, drag out, Control, drag out, and then you can pull this one here and here, trying to create like an edge loop for the nostril here. So pull this one down here, move that one in, whoops, then down. So you can see we're getting into a tricky spot here where, how do I run this edge loop, right? So basically what I want to do is it's kind of a divergent topology here. The trick here is to not draw this square like this and pull it in, because that's not going to deform to meet this shape very well. What you want to do is pull this one and make a face that way, so that there's a seam coming off of this. This is going to create like a place where the polygons kind of meet. And then you could do one of two things. You could pull another one like this way and then create a triangle in here, or you can just pull to that, and that probably works okay. Okay. Notice it didn't snap to that inner point there. Okay. So let's go ahead and draw this down further. Okay, and then here's where we have to figure out, like, how do we make these rings meet, because we want to create a ring around the nostril. So we can come this way, one to here, back across. The trick is how far do you want to, how much this topology will flow into the lips. So you need some extra. And then come to there maybe. And we can join those up. To do that, just select this point to that point, right mouse click, merge vertices at last. It'll snap to the last selected one. So now we have an edge loop that's not snapped to the surface there, but now it is. And we can always add more here because it's quads. So let's go ahead and continue down the face, go back to our poly build, draw across. Notice that I'm clicking on each as I go. Pull this down to the top of the lip. And then go across. We may want an extra edge here. We'll see. We'll fix the flow here in a minute. Finish out the nostril. It may be that we've made too much topology here. We'll figure that out in a second. We can always merge things. Probably want to extrude that one in to here, bring it up high, and then just come off that to the inner. Things will start to come together inside the nostril. We'll figure out how to combine these in a sec. I'm going to go with it and make this yeah, I think this might work. Pull this off. And one more. So let's go ahead and merge all these points. Merge at last. G, I'm just repeating the command. Okay. Now we can close this with two quads, so that'll work. Maybe want to go across this way, so use a poly build. Quad 1, quad 2, select all three of these points and merge at last. And there you go. Now you can hit position and move these points to get them to be more interior to the nostril. Notice that we have an edge loop now, so if we wanted to insert, it's kind of collapsing on itself. But we do have edge loops. They add in the wrong way. We kind of want them to go flow-wise, where they'll just sort of interior wrap, but it's fine. What's causing, it's where we created this extra topology. I think it's going to be okay though. Also because it's tucked in the nostril, it's less important. And the other thing, when you're doing this retopology, you really want to try to avoid getting too dense with the retopo. You want to get the detail out, but if you go too dense, you're just going to be once you do a subdivision, you're going to end up doing way more work, or have polygons where you don't really need them for the detail, I guess is a good way to put it. And you know, if you subdivided each one of these 6 times, that's you know, 1, 4, 16, 32. It's going up to like 256 polys for, you know, something just here in the corner or something like that. It's not going, it's too much. Okay, so stay low on the poly count while you're doing this retopo if you can. It takes a little practice to get that. You can tell I'm still not quite great at it because I tend to want to draw out all of the detail. Again, though, you can come back and merge and flatten things to get them, merge the verts to get the poly count lower when you need it. This may be another divergence because I want to follow this nostril going up. Yeah, oops. And then just do something like that because I'm trying to follow this line along the interior of the nostril there. Then we'll come back across. We'll see if we get the detail. This does not have to take its shape as long as it's roughly there. We can come back and sculpt it in later. You do want to kind of make sure you have enough topology that flows back across the cheek. It looks like I'm doing okay. And this was one where you might insert like this quad right here. It doesn't have to go and flow into this. It could be, let's get this one positioned and this one positioned. It could just be an extra quad to create more topology in the nose on this. In this case, this is all smooth, so we don't really need it. So what we can do is flow it that way. Finish this quad out. In fact, we could probably even pinch one of these into a triangle if we wanted to. These are not sitting on the nose. Let's go back. All right, here's where we can start to close out this topology and get some back. So we can basically take a quad that way so that we get less. All right, let's join these up. Merge vertices at last. Drag G up. Merge vertices at center. Either or. And we'll do this one to the last. Okay. So you can start to see how this retopology works. It's going to take a while. I'm going to go ahead, since I've explained, if I come to a part where it's sort of, I need to slow down and show you something new, like maybe I'm going to add some extra lines that aren't really there so I can go and fix the ears or whatever, or I'll do the mouth. In fact, let's go ahead and do the mouth so I can show you how that'll work. We will continue this poly line down here on the lip, going across. And what you want is basically to go to close to this interior line that I've created where the seam should be, but give it enough detail to describe the lip and not join them to the bottom lip, because we're going to extrude this out once we get done with the retopology to create the interior of the mouth. Okay, so I'll show you how that works. And we're also going to, in the meantime, we're going to create an edge loop or 2 or 3 to get it to flow around the mouth. So this is one where I want the lip to flow around. So I'm going to pull this and tighten it there. Pull this one in to kind of create that, and then have this flow around down to the frown line. So I'm caring more about this. This will be like the crease of the mouth flow interior. Let's do the bottom lip. Since this is the crease, I want to pull this one here, and then this will become the crease for going across the lip along the bottom. And we just have to figure out detail-wise how much of a crease we want, so, or how much topology in this bottom lip we want, how many edge loops, I guess is a good way to put it. So since this is flowing around, whoops, and this one's flowing down, we'll start this coming back. And the same thing here. So this will give us like at that extra lip in the, or line along the bottom lip here to give us some more detail, and this can become the bottom of the lip. So if that makes sense. So I've still got a quad there. So this can come all the way across. In fact, I will bring it all the way across. Now this is going to cut through the geometry, but we can always insert edge loops later. I'm just bringing it back to the center and getting it in position. And then we can go and add all, however many of these we want. Let's just do 4 for now. And then make sure you come back and using the poly build, grab each one so you can get it positioned and snapped to the surface, because it was not snapped when we drug the whole thing across. Okay? And then just go back and rebuild all this topology. You want some extra polys in the lips, because you're going to end up distorting these a lot if you end up making mouth shapes for animation. So let me go ahead and merge these. Whoops, accidentally merged across for some reason. There we go. So yeah, don't be afraid to put some extra topology in the mouth, because by the time you end up creating like imagine this guy having like a really wicked smile, all this stuff's going to get stretched out a lot, so you'll need it. And notice what's going on is like this thing's collapsed, it's not to the surface. All I got to do to fix that is just snap. I'm just clicking on the points to get them to come forward and snap to the surface. See how that popped? Pop, pop. Bring that together. There. And this just happens every now and then when you're doing this retopology, is can't find the surface it wants to snap to. Now it's right. It was probably because I ran that extrusion all the way across and then did the edge loops. But I think I need one more coming up to there. We want to make sure that the topology kind of meets or lines up, that we get equal for equal, because when we extrude all this, we're going to want to join it back up. It doesn't have to be the same count. We're going to take it to kind of like an esophagus that'll go down his throat. We're not going to, in other words, I'm going to take this and extrude it back and kind of end it where you can't see where it ends, so that when he opens his mouth, if he's got his mouth open, yawning or whatever, you won't be able to see where the topology terminates. All right, take that to there. And so then we can make I think might need, no, I think it's all right. Don't have to meet 100%. Let's just make all these snap. Okay. Then I can extrude to the interior from that. I think that'll work fine. It gets a little dense here. I may, I think, I could come back and take it out if I need to. This is the, at the same time, you do want some more topology here in the edge, because that's what's going to collapse on you or freak out when you start to do some facial animation. So let's keep retopologizing. Since I did the hard part, notice I left these disconnected because I'm going to do the extrude with them later. I'll do the same thing with this eye part. Alright, so finally, after all that, let's go to Shade Smooth. We have our retopologized model. So you can see it's a lot lower topology. I think it's, I've got that turned on. So the plane is 4,880 faces, not counting the eyeballs, which aren't turned on, whereas the old guy was 500,000 or so. So, and it's pretty good topology. You can notice it's squares everywhere. The hands I could use a little work in terms of sculpting, but they're good enough for now. And we can go and make good inner mouth. I've got some topology to work with for the ear, and the same with the eyeballs. The main reason you want to go, and if you want to model characters and do it this way, is to get good edge loops so that we can go and dice and slice this guy for UVs. Let me go ahead and save, and I'll show you what that entails. So we're going to leave the mirroring turned on here. We go back into edit mode and we double click using edge, just double click, say like this edge loop. We get a nice quick selection going around, and we can right click and mark seam, which will make it turn red. And basically that will allow us to easily UV map this guy. So let's go ahead and do the same with his neck, which doesn't flow there. Let's see. Maybe here. Let's see. We can go around like this. Actually, I want to do the neck a little higher. So let's do this. Sometimes you have to manually select because the double click won't work. Come around like that, mark seam. We can mark seam along the center line, which will go all the way around like that. If we want to split it, we don't really need to do that because we're going to unwrap along the sides for the most part. I'll leave his arms, I'll unwrap at the hands, and then you want to select an edge, probably along that side. We can deselect these. Kind of like the way that seam's working to get a front and a back. We will not do this leg that way though, or the bottom of the foot. I'm just trying control to deselect, and okay to do the inside of the short. We can double click this, deselect this one, and we can always unselect this as well. Yep. So mark seam, or clear the seam. If we do that, mark seam. So if we don't like the seam that we made, we can deselect it. I'm going to mark seam here. And we'll do the, it's looking pretty good. I may want to double click on this seam and actually move it up topologically into the leg a little bit more, just to kind of give him more of an inner pants loop. I can do the feet. Mark seam. I'll do the bottom of the feet, so we can get the, if we want to put a tread on the bottom here, around the shoe, mark seam. This will allow us to easily unwrap this. I'll put a seam back here so that it'll unwrap fairly cleanly. I can even put a seam there. That way we can do a kind of a stacked leather here and something else if we want. On top of that, I'm going to make this so that, because it's a hard crease, I'm going to mark it as sharp. And same here. That would make it blue. If it was actually showing up, the red tends to show. Mark sharp here. What that does is it'll make it a hard crease if we go under our vertex and normals and do auto smooth. You'll see auto smooth kind of gives you some hard edges in here and there, but that's just based on this angle, so you can set it to be a lot smoother, crank it up to like 60 something, and then it'll be smooth pretty much everywhere except for where you tell it you want a hard crease, like there. Could do one here too. Alright. Just trying to see if I've got everything unwrapped. You're going to want to create a seam along here, like so we can unwrap the back and the front torso. I did the underside of the arm, so that'll unwrap clean. Now, for the hands, it gets a little tricky. You'll want to unwrap each finger loop. See if I can double click select as much as possible. It's not easy because of the way I've built this topology. And then double come around. Let's see. Just as long as they join up, because we want to make sure that we cut these out so that they'll unwrap clean, like a sausage. Missing that, and then come along the side of the glove here for the hand, and then here, and we'll unwrap along this part for the thumb. Kind of basically, it's like the way seams would work on clothes. And mark seam. And then we'll want to unwrap this part. Let's see, we need to do around the edge. We need to do one seam on the fingers, probably on the inside here, so it's hidden. So just come out. Oops. Actually, let's go on the bottom. Come along. And then go up along the fingernail line. And then that way it'll unwrap. It's a little weird. Same thing along here. Actually, along here. And I need to do these others. Doesn't matter which side I do it on. Oops. Okay, and let's go to this one. Seems like I've got a lot of extra topology on this hand. I won't question it for now. On this finger here, just And then the pinky. Okay, there's the seams for that. I need to do the head. Just want to make sure I've gotten all of this cleanly. I could put a seam along the crotch if I wanted, but I don't think I want to, since I'm doing the shorts separate. Make sure I've got there, yep. Alright, so now let's do the head. So the head's a little tricky. You want it to kind of wrap. There's places where you're going to want to cut out the ears. So I made this an edge loop, so I can easily select. And, yep, mark seam for the ear. And that'll sort of unwrap it. It's a little weird because it'll, this is going to distort a little bit. So that's kind of the way the ear operates, though. So I'm going to leave it like that. We'll see how it ends up. And we probably want to ease in order, and since this is our hat, and we'll be black, I'm going to go along here. Let's do it along this one, actually. Treat it like sideburns. Something like that. And then we can come around this ear and unwrap that. And then we can go along the edge. So that it'll come off in two pieces. I don't need to worry about this. This will unwrap fairly cleanly, and it's going to be black for the most part anyway. But we do need to come around the bottom of the cap. Like that. And then put a split around the back of the neck. And this should probably go in, yeah, the hat should probably go in two pieces as well, just to kind of make it easier to pack it. Go. This will unwrap pretty clean. Just taking a look. We're probably going to want a seam around the eye here for the inner eye and the outer eye, so we can mark that. We haven't made that yet, but and the same thing for the interior mouth and the outer mouth. Mark seam. That looks pretty good. Let's save. I'll show you what that looks like when it unwraps. So if I take them now and go to UV editing mode, select all the faces in X-ray. Right now it looks like this because we started with a plane, and that's the way the UV map for the plane looked. But if you do UV unwrap, then you get all of your different islands. Trying to find where the head is. Looks like I see what's going on. because I'm mirroring it right now, it's only showing up half of the UV map. So this is the face and the torso, but you can see everything's pretty evenly distributed. It's a pretty good UV map, and we can come back later and stack it. Just for grins to show you, let's see, oops, go back here. Let's turn on like this. So I select everything, and then if I UV map that, it's not showing. So I want to flip. Oh, everything's overlapped. V. Not V, U, sorry. It's still not going to show up until I actually apply the map. So let me just show you what that would be like. If I turn this off, we'll save it. Because mainly I want to show you how it's going to, when I apply the map, the mirror, I mean, I can't do it in edit mode, apply. Now if I select this and go to edit mode, you can see where my seams have mirrored. And if I select my faces, there's all of the mapping independent. It's like flipped and mirrored. If I want to do it together though, I can just do another unwrap, and you can see I've got a pretty good face map. There's the feet. It's pretty well organized. So that's the reason you do this retopology. You can take these islands, you're selecting by island here, and rotate and make certain things more predominant, go and paint texture maps. We'll do that in the next video. For now, I'm going to leave it without the mirror in case I want to come and do some extra sculpting, but I'm going to call that the end of this video, and I'll post another with the texture mapping and the final renders and stuff and rigging. If you have any questions, just post them in the comments.